I, a 33-year-old female, have been married to my 34-year-old husband for 5 years. We initially met at a concert when I was 25, drawn to his charming and laid-back personality. We exchanged numbers, started going out, and within a few months decided to commit to each other. At the time, he was working as an professional, but his true passion lay in being a drummer. He had a college band and maintained ties with his musical friends. Despite his musical aspirations, the reality of the music industry, unstable and financially risky, led him to stick to his job. He'd engage in weekend gigs with his bandmates for the sheer enjoyment of it. I, on the other hand, work as a registered nurse, a demanding profession that everyone recognizes. About a year into our relationship, we decided to move in together, primarily due to the strain of commuting between our separate houses. Living together, however, revealed some challenges. I discovered that my husband is a bit of a slob, requiring constant cleaning up after him. After a long day at the hospital, the last thing I want is to handle household chores neglected by him. Additionally, he tends to be careless with finances, necessitating me to take charge of all the financial responsibilities. I ensure he doesn't make unnecessary purchases, reminiscent of his bachelor days when his room was cluttered with abandoned musical instruments. Fortunately, I made him declutter, sell some items, and bring order to his life. He was resistant initially, but I made it explicitly clear that for our shared living arrangement, cleanliness and financial responsibility were non-negotiable. His past habits, including late rent payments and delayed bill payments, had to change. After moving in together, I successfully put an end to these issues. While I believe this was a positive step, unfortunately, my mother-in-law doesn't share the same sentiment. I was introduced to his family 6 months into our relationship, anticipating a warm welcome given my husband's positive descriptions of his mother. However, the reception was quite the opposite. She appeared cold and distant, making no effort to be friendly. Though not openly cruel, she lacked enthusiasm about me and expressed disapproval of the changes she perceived in her son. According to her, I was forcing him to end his youth prematurely, restricting his fun and referring to me as his ball and chain. Despite her attempts to pass these comments off as jokes, I could sense her disapproval. I chose not to confront her. As long as my husband supported the positive changes in his lifestyle, I remained unconcerned about his mother's opinions. Since that introduction, our interactions have been civil for the sake of my husband's sanity. However, our conversations are limited, even in family settings. We keep it short and avoid unnecessary talk. Whether my husband has noticed or not, I cannot say. Even if he has, he understands not to interfere. This has been the dynamic since I started dating him, and we were content with it until a few weeks ago. So, my uncle recently passed away, and he happened to be incredibly wealthy, having been the CEO of his own company and amassing a considerable fortune. Since he had no wife or children, I inherited half of his wealth, with the other half going to my mother. We had a close bond from my childhood, and I kept in touch with him over the years, cherishing the holiday visits filled with laughter. His passing was a significant loss, and I was mourning. The inheritance, while substantial, was not my immediate focus. Grieving my uncle took precedence. The wealth provided financial security, but the emotional toll of his loss was far more significant. However, my husband, in an insensitive move, broached the topic of money just an hour after we returned from the funeral and the reading of the will. Expressing his desire to quit his job and pursue his dream of becoming a full-time drummer now that we were rich. My husband's timing couldn't have been worse. Already upset from mourning my uncle, his disregard for my emotions frustrated me. Instead of offering comfort, he delved into discussions about our newfound wealth. In the midst of my emotional turmoil, I had an angry outburst, clarifying that it wasn't a joint inheritance but mine to decide upon. Despite my intention to use the money for both of us, my words in the heat of the moment sparked a heated argument. Accusing me of hindering his enjoyment, not supporting his dreams, and constantly nagging him about money, my husband's frustrations escalated. Now that we had a substantial amount of money, I found myself hesitant to share it with my husband. Over the past 5 years, he had put aside his dreams for the sake of my happiness. This didn't sit well with me because, firstly, None of the changes were solely for my happiness. If he wasn't willing to adopt a more responsible lifestyle, he should have considered ending the relationship. Moving in together comes with responsibilities, and commitment is essential. Our argument ensued for about an hour, filled with shouting and name-calling, making it our most significant and serious fight to date. The aftermath was days of silence, and while I was hurt, I refrained from initiating the conversation. I believed my words were spoken in anger, while his reflected underlying feelings built up over the years. Yesterday morning, he finally broke the silence, offering an apology for his words. Ready to move past the conflict, I reciprocated the sentiment. The silent treatment didn't align with my approach, and considering it was our wedding anniversary, I didn't want the tension to persist. We agreed to halt the ongoing dispute, opting to discuss it later after we had both individually reflected on the matter. He also mentioned that his mother was hosting a dinner to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary. Despite my reluctance to spend the evening with my mother-in-law, I agreed, given his assurance of a soon-to-come trip to the hills that we had postponed for far too long due to work commitments. With this in mind, I decided to attend the dinner, recognizing it was just one evening and couldn't be that bad. My mother-in-law was making an effort to do something nice for the first time, so I decided to reciprocate by attending the celebration with enthusiasm. I dressed in my best clothes, even getting my hair done, and we headed to her house in the evening. Upon arrival, I noticed the beautifully decorated house, exuding an elegant atmosphere. I was genuinely impressed by the effort she had put in considering our strained relationship. When I complimented her on the arrangements, she responded, stating that her son had finally given her a reason to celebrate, and she was pulling out all the stops. This comment caught me off guard, as we had been married for 5 years, and she had never done anything special for us before. Not being pregnant, I had no idea what her cryptic remark meant, but the need to socialize with the guests distracted me, and I soon forgot about it. After a while, dinner was served, but before my husband or I could say anything, my mother-in-law raised a glass. Initially thinking it was a toast to our 5 years of marriage, I was surprised when she continued to express that the toast was for her son. He had worked hard enough to retire early and could now pursue his dream of becoming a professional drummer. She even mentioned how he had achieved this without any support, looking directly at me, and stated that he had overcome odds and fought against those who discouraged him. Despite everything, he was finally going to do what he was born to do, and she expressed pride in his accomplishments. I was utterly lost, struggling to comprehend her words, so I turned to my husband seated beside me. He whispered the truth, revealing that he had informed his mother about his plan to quit his job soon and return to being a full-time drummer. However, he couldn't disclose that he intended to rely on my inheritance, as she would never accept it. Instead, he claimed to have saved up enough on his own to afford the transition. I was furious because I hadn't agreed to any of this. I didn't want him to return to music, not only due to the instability of the career but also because he lacked the skill to make it as a full-time musician. He was, at best, an amateur, far from the level of those who could sustain themselves in the field. Moreover, inheriting a substantial sum didn't mean he could revert to his spendthrift ways. I refused to let him believe he was entitled to that money. What hurt the most was the comment his mother made about me never supporting him, a statement that simply wasn't true. Both my husband and I knew that I supported him every step of the way, steering him toward a responsible path for his own good and our future. My husband hadn't even defended me when his mother accused me of being unsupportive. Fed up with their behavior, I decided it was time to stand up for myself, much to my husband's attempts to silence me. I stood up, looked directly at my mother-in-law, and decided to reveal the entire truth. I asserted that my husband hadn't worked any harder than I did and wouldn't have been able to afford retirement for at least another 50 years if I wasn't there to keep him in check. He was essentially a manchild, never taught the value of money by his mother. The wealth she boasted about was money inherited from my uncle, now solely mine as I was done with her and her son. The family, including my parents, was in shock at my mother-in-law's speech, but mine left them truly speechless. After delivering my piece, I left without another word. Despite my husband's attempts to stop me, I drove to a nearby hotel to clear my mind. 2 hours have passed, And I've cooled down a bit, but coming to terms with what my husband did remains extremely challenging. I've tolerated everything for too long, and I can't continue this way. My husband has never been hardworking, receiving an increment only twice in 5 years. His lack of interest in his job is apparent, but he can't just give up, especially when bills need to be paid. Moreover, his mother had the audacity to accuse me of being unsupportive when, in reality, I've consistently encouraged him to pursue his passion reasonably. Unlike his mother, I understand that his not having fun shouldn't lead to financial trouble. I can't comprehend why he would divulge these plans to his mother without even discussing it with me first. He's been texting me incessantly since I left, but I haven't opened the messages because I don't want to hear what he has to say right now. I'm incredibly angry about today's events, and I don't believe an apology via text will resolve anything. I just need to determine if my anger is justified or if I'm overreacting. So, am I the asshole for telling my mother-in-law the truth about her son after she accused me of being unsupportive? Update 1. Hey everyone. I want to express my gratitude for the overwhelming support and advice. Thank you all for taking the time to send such kind messages. It means a lot to me. I'm still staying at the hotel, but I did speak to my husband this morning. It's been 2 days, and I finally thought it was time to respond. In his texts, he has been repeatedly apologizing for the trouble he caused. He assured me that he had no idea his mother would do something like this, and if he had known, he never would have asked me to attend in the first place. He didn't provide many details and kept requesting me to talk so he could explain what happened. Curious about his explanation, I agreed to meet him. When I returned home, he explained that the evening before he apologized, he had been talking to his mother on the phone. He ended up telling her that he didn't want to continue working and desired to quit his job to become a drummer, claiming that I was forcing him to work. He avoided mentioning the inheritance because he knew his mother wouldn't approve of him living off it. In response, his mother encouraged him to pursue his desires and criticized me for supposedly hindering him from living life to the fullest. This further fueled our ongoing fight. He said he would discuss it with me, and if I opposed his decision to quit his job, he would leave me. This made his mother happy, which wasn't surprising. The next day, he realized his foolishness and apologized to me. However, he still had to answer to his mother. When she called him that evening, he lied to avoid further conversations about the situation. He told her that we had discussed matters, and he convinced me to agree only after threatening to leave. His mom wasn't thrilled that we weren't getting a divorce, but she was delighted that he was finally pursuing his musical dreams. She offered to throw an anniversary party for us, and that's how this unfolded. He lied to his mother to mask his indecisiveness, painted me as unsupportive just to please her, and saw nothing wrong with sacrificing me to justify his actions. As he recounted it to me, he portrayed himself as a victim caught between his mom and wife. Today, it dawned on me that I hadn't been a wife. I'd been parenting a man-child. He wasn't a victim. I was the victim of marriage to someone unable to handle responsibilities. Realizing this, I decided I was done. If he wanted to jeopardize his life by quitting his job and pursuing music, he could, but I wouldn't be part of it. I packed my things while he tried to talk me into staying, but I was resolute. I informed him that I wouldn't baby him anymore, and he was on his own. He didn't have to worry about a nagging wife. He could chase his dreams without me holding him back. Then, I left and blocked him everywhere because I didn't want to hear from him. I'm heartbroken, but I know the marriage is over. I tried hard, but we're fundamentally different, and I've realized waiting for him to change won't work. He's always been lazy, failing in various endeavors, and working for the same salary for 5 years. My progress in my career and love for him were the only reasons we stayed together, but I can't wait any longer. He's on his own now, and so am I. Update 2. Some of you need to understand that not every woman is alike. I'm baffled by accusations of abandoning my husband due to having more money. I consistently earn more, so it's not about money. If I were a gold digger, why be with someone who earns less? I would have shared the money if he'd discussed it civilly instead of fighting during my grief. Common sense. To those claiming I wasn't supportive of his music passion, it's easier said than done. He never worked hard on his skills, remaining an amateur. There's little hope for him to go pro. He lacks the dedication. Despite attending gigs and funding lessons, he eventually stopped going. I tried my best amid long work hours, paying bills while he played drums. Despite more love than hate here, I feel I owe an explanation for why things weren't going to work out. His music and his mother were always prioritized over me, and I grew tired of putting him first when it was evident he'd never reciprocate. As for why I was adamant about saving money, it's a sensitive issue. In my 30s and still childless, I desired a child. We had been trying without success. I suggested IVF, adoption, or surrogacy, intending to save for our future child. However, he prioritized his future as a drummer and a bachelor's rockstar lifestyle, funded by his parents. I've changed my number, ensuring he can't reach me. I informed our common friends that I don't want to hear from him. The next conversation will involve my lawyer. Update 3. Hey everyone, it's been a while. I recently secured a lawyer and initiated divorce proceedings. Soon, he'll be served with the papers. He and his mother attempted to apologize by visiting my parents, but my parents, aware of his actions, dismissed them. Their motives are tied to the inheritance money. I am determined to safeguard what's rightfully mine, with the assistance of the best lawyer I can afford. Stay tuned for more stories from our channel.